Canik used to have a skinny gun, but the skinny guns kept getting bigger with more capacity. Now Canik also has a skinny gun with all the rounds with the Canik MC9L and MC9LS. So previously Canik had the MC9 and this was a fantastic little gun. It had a 12 round magazine and a 15 round magazine, but the problem with the gun is that the gun ends kind of right there, and that where it lands in the palm is uncomfortable to shoot. So while the gun is thinner than the typical Canik guns, it's not as comfortable to shoot as the bigger Canik guns. So fast forward to now, and you can get basically the same gun with a longer grip, meaning that you have the pressure being put in the base of your palm where it belongs. And realistically, these guns are not wildly different in size. The Canik MC9L is basically the same height as the MC9 with the 15 round magazine, but you get 2 more rounds in the MC9L. So the MC9L is basically in Sig Sauer macro land. This is a 3.2 inch barrel, but there's also an available MC9LS, which has a 3.6 inch barrel. And yes, I will tell you which one's my favorite at the end of the video. But it's basically the same gun, it's just there's an extra 4/10 of an inch on the slide and barrel right there. So we're gonna look at these guns, put them side by side with a couple other guns, and obviously crown a winner at the end of the video. Welcome back to the channel, I'm David, and if you like videos about new guns and gear and stuff like that, or me answering questions that I get curious about, then consider subscribing. Quick hello to the dads in the audience, I hope you guys are still crushing it. Also, did you know that the first French fries weren't cooked in France? They're cooked in grease. Now, I like to tell you guys how guns come to the channel. These were actually sent to me for video by the guys over at Canik. I didn't have a terrible amount of time with these. This is much more of a kind of first shot sort of overview type video with the guns. If I don't touch on anything, let me know in the comments what you're curious about and maybe I can answer those questions for you. So jumping into the gun, let's get through all of the kind of website stuff first, but I'll put the end right at the beginning. This size gun is the size the gun should have been all along, because even with the short magazine involved, the short mag is basically the same length from top to bottom as the MC9 is with, you know, the pinky extension. So I'm glad that they made it honest and just kind of put a full usable grip on the gun now, and now the gun is pretty special. So obviously I prefer it over the MC9. My biggest criticism of that gun was the grip was just a little bit too short. And now that they've got the bigger grip with a bunch more rounds involved, it's even better. So let's get into it. Now, one of the first things Canik is widely known for is the value, and the value on this gun is very strong. Now, forgive me while I use crappy late 90s slang, because YouTube's being weird about saying the price of guns in gun review videos right now. Yes, that is a thing. One of these is gonna set you back just shy of about $5 bills. No, I'm not trying to sell you a stupid gun, it's a gun review. And when you talk about value, if you look at everything that comes in the case, 2 magazines, a holster, all the tools to clean and work on the pistol that you need, and mount optics, all right there, it's really tough not to love Caniks. The gun is a 9mm, obviously comes with 2 17 round magazines. If it's like the other Canik guns, I imagine the mags will probably sell for about $35 if you can find them. It is optics cut for an RMSC, as you can see here on the MC9LS, which has the Canik M01 on there. That's a pretty decent auto adjuster. I've done another video on it. You can check it out if you care to see it. The controls are ambi, and the mag catch is convertible to the opposite side of the pistol as well. At least I believe it is. I didn't bother trying. The gun weighs about 24 ounces. It's got a kind of, like, I would say medium light fissure texture on the grip, and it is super comfortable. The grip texture kind of stops at the relief to get onto the mag release, which is unfortunate because you want to be able to put your support hand to plant right there and there's no traction to bite it. Comparing it to a couple other guns in the segment, the gun, as I mentioned, is roughly the same size as a Sig Macro, which I believe this is probably intended to compete with. It is a little bit bigger than a P365 XL, and it's roughly the same size as a Glock 48, which is slightly longer in the muzzle, but this gets nearly double the rounds as the 48. The gun that it reminds me the most of is the Arex Delta M, which is very similar in proportion to the gun, except for the Arex has 15 round magazines, whereas this has 17. So let's start with the trigger, since this is a Canik, since that's what you guys love to talk about on the Caniks, and the trigger on this one is very nice. It is the Mete style trigger shoe, which is a broad serrated face of the trigger with a trigger safety that goes flush and doesn't really get in the way. And then there is very even take up, getting to a very, very firm wall, providing excellent feedback to the shooter that you are on the wall and the trigger is staged. And then there is a very slight amount of over travel as there's a super clean brake, and then a very positive assist on swinging the trigger forward. Very, very shootable trigger, very predictable, very easy to, control and make shots with. The trigger pull weight on this is appropriate. It's somewhere in the 5.5 pound range. It kind of varies between the two different models, but that's what it came out on my Lyman trigger scale. Ergonomically, the gun has a full 3-finger grip, meaning all 3 fingers under the trigger guard can get on the grip with a little hook at the bottom of the grip that kind of forces your fingers up under the trigger guard, where there is an excellent bit of relief. You can kind of see that bit of relief right there for your hand to get right up under the guard. So it sinks down into your hand very, very nicely. The sculpt of the grip tang at the back is eased, and so it doesn't feel too blocky. In fact, it feels pretty good. It gets the gun very deep in the web of your hand, which is what you want. And then the controls with the gun in a firing grip are very accessible. I can reach the mag release and the ambi slide releases, no problem. The slide releases are a little bit tricky because they are like super melty, low profile to keep the gun as thin as possible, but they're very usable once you get kind of used to them. The grip on the gun is kind of a sweet spot because it's broad enough to spread out force in your palm when you're shooting, and there's enough space on the grip to get the support hand to contribute to recoil management, but it's still a little bit thinner than a true double stack, so it conceals very nicely. The shooting experience with the gun, I mean, it has a little bit of pop and jump as any gun with a lightweight slide like these have. You would expect them to, but the Canik team did an excellent job in kind of balancing the spring weights in it, because it's actually very pleasant to shoot, despite the fact it is a skinny concealed carry lightweight 9. It's even comfortable to shoot with the stouter defensive loads. I tested it with 3. I did the Federal HSTs. This is Federal HST 124s. A little jumpier. Hornady Critical Duty Plus P 135 grain. Is Critical Duty 135 grain Plus P. No problems. But shooting it with Buffalo Creek 115s, and Buffalo Creek makes super soft shooting ammo. They support the channel, help me out with some of the ammo there. If you check the comments, that might be in your interest. But with the Buffalo Creek 115s, it was super gentle shooting. It was easy to stay on the range and just kind of shoot all day if you wanted to. So negatives about the gun before we get into sort of which I would prefer over the two models. Negatives about the gun are pretty modest. Honestly, my biggest negative on the MC9 was the fact that the grip kind of stopped halfway down your palm and put pressure in the heel of your palm in a very uncomfortable way, and it wasn't really getting you anything from the height-wise. So that addressed my biggest concerns with the gun. There are still a couple things that I don't love about the pistol. None of the Canik pistols have traction up to the underside of the slide, allowing your support hand to get onto the gun and help contribute to recoil in a meaningful way. That's not unique to Canik. A lot of different gun makers are not running the traction all the way up, but when they do, it's so much better. Another negative is if you're somebody with compromised hand strength, the serrations are kind of light and the springing is kind of heavy, and it's necessary for that little lightweight slide. And they're really in a no-win situation here, because if they made these into absolute cheese graters, what would happen is you would go to rack the slide, and because the spring is heavy, you would probably have it slip and then like take skin off your fingers and you'd curse the thing. Or you can have what they have and just complain there's not enough traction to really move the slide. Either way, if you have compromised hand strength, it's a very difficult gun to manipulate the slide on. If you have an optic, it becomes a lot easier because you can use gross muscles rather than just your hands. And probably the last thing to kind of complain about is they have a 12 o'clock loaded chamber indicator on the slide. And you can see that right there. When there's a round in the chamber, it kind of stands up. But what that does is it lets smoke out of the 12 o'clock side of the chamber, and it can smoke the lens of the optic. Generally speaking, like the extractor relief cuts where you can just kind of peek at the round is a little bit nicer, but because the optic cut is so far back from that loaded chamber indicator, it wasn't that big of an issue, but you can definitely observe it happening. Before closing out, I have to give you guys a winner between the MC9L and MC9LS. Now I can tell you what my pick is, and obviously it's the correct choice, and it's a very serious, overblown, like lots and lots of consequences. I actually favor the longer slide version of the gun, and that's not because it shoots any nicer, because it doesn't. They shoot absolutely the same, like perfectly identically. Pretty similar, honestly, not a big change between the shorter barrel and the longer barrel. It's not enough weight to make much of a difference in how the gun shoots. It just has more barrel, so it's more likely to get more velocity out of the ammunition and have hollow points expand is my only reason for picking that. But there is a really good reason that you would like just the MC9L. It shoots just the same as the longer slide gun, but it has holster commonality with the old MC9. So this gun will fit in this gun's holsters, whereas it's gonna take a minute for the MC9LS to have holster availability. So if you're an instant gratification type, I would say that probably just the MC9L makes sense. If you want every ounce of performance out of your carry ammunition, I would say probably the LS makes sense. Not to say you can't buy ammo that performs well out of short barrel guns, but you have more options available to you with just a little bit more velocity. So back to the top, it's tough not to be a big fan of Canik when they give you just so much value for the money. The pistol is super high quality. The triggers are excellent. Some of the best triggers in striker fired guns available. Really hitting their stride and kind of figuring out how the springing needs to be on the guns. And they just feel very, very well set up right from the box. Like, it's really a nice gun for not a ton of money. So having the option of the longer gripped guns is definitely in my wheelhouse, and I would say that these would make most people who like Canik guns very happy. And if you made it this far and you like Canik guns, there's a good chance you're watching this video as a trigger snob, which is a shortcut to not developing proper fundamentals and technique. And I've made this video that will help show you how to stop shooting guns to the left and improve your technique, so check that out.